What's the good word, nerds? Sarge here with Working Adult Gaming, coming at you today to discuss what it's like to play PlanetSide 2 in 2018. Today we're going to look at PlanetSide 2 through the same lens that we analyze every game and piece of gaming content on this channel. We look at it through the scope of a working adult or someone that has very little free time on their hands to spend playing video games. We obviously don't want to get you wrapped up in some type of a grind fest or game where you feel like you're just hopping on to do dailies and you never actually make any progress or stay up to date with the current content. One of the really nice things about PlanetSide 2 is the progression system is typical of any online first-person shooter. You know, it doesn't have any MMO implications or any looter type implications, so you basically can just hop into the game at any time. You don't feel like you're missing out if you don't hop on for a few days. There's not a lot of progression you're gonna miss. With that being said, the progression system is pretty important to PlanetSide 2. A lot of guns, a lot of vehicles that you can unlock, a lot of attachments and accessories for those vehicles that are unlocked through the progression system. So I feel like PlanetSide 2 actually hits a pretty good sweet spot for working adults because there is progression and you can always feel like you're working towards something, but it's not the type of progression that's really a time-sensitive progression. You know, in most modern-day looters and MMO light games, as they like to call them now, if you're offline for a couple weeks, the rest of the gaming community passes you up, and you feel like, what's the point of coming back now, because everybody already has the top-tier shit. I won't be special when I get it 2 months later. I can't even find anyone to do a raid with me, because they've already done it and gotten the gear out of it, so now I'm kind of just going to go grind a bunch of solo missions to get gear, to basically do nothing because nobody wants to run the same raid 18 times. With that being said, in my opinion, especially from the perspective of a working adult, the accumulation of XP and certs, which are the currency you'll use to unlock weapons and vehicles and attachments, is a little bit on the slow side. I purchased the premium pass for a month just to see what that was like, to see how that would speed up the progression. It does speed it up quite a bit, but you're still looking at days unless you have a significant amount of time. But if you're only playing for an hour or two a day, you're looking at days and days in between just even being able to unlock one new weapon. The attachments are quite a bit cheaper, so you know, you can trick out one weapon, you can try a bunch of different variations from one weapon relatively frequently. But if you want to purchase a new gun, you're looking at most of the weapons are either 650 or 1,000 certs. And it takes quite a bit of time to earn 1,000 certs. Like I said, if you can only play a couple hours a day, you may be looking at a week to acquire 1,000 certs or somewhere along those lines. And that kind of makes the game get a little bit old, a little fast, because you're just using the same few weapons all the time, same few vehicles all the time. So I definitely wish that the progression system was a little bit faster. There are a couple other positives about the progression system in PlanetSide 2. Off the top of my head, I don't think that anything other than a couple classes are locked off due to your level in game. So pretty much at the rate in which you earn certs is the rate in which you can unlock weapons, and you can unlock the weapons of your choice. To me, there's nothing more annoying when there's one gun or a weapon class in particular that you like playing with, and you're not able to unlock that particular weapon until you're, like, say, level 30 or 40 in the progression system. So it's really nice. You can basically, from the get-go, unlock the types of weapons that you prefer to play with. So that's nice. You start with basically one of each weapon unlocked, but then you can quickly move into unlocking multiple weapons of the same weapon class as quickly as you'd like. Another thing that's really nice about PlanetSide 2, kind of related to the progression system, is the amount of customization that the game allows for. It's a lot more close to the Battlefield series than it is to the Call of Duty series. in the fact that if you'd rather fly, or you'd rather drive a tank, or if you'd rather snipe, you can move your progression in that direction and really focus on the playstyle that you prefer. And one final thing I have to mention, I don't want to bore you guys too much just talking about progression for an entire video, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least brush over this. There are some progression and customization options that are clearly OP versus other options. To me, this can be both a good and a bad thing. You know, it's nice to see, okay, well, that class is really good. If I set myself up that way, I'll have a distinct advantage. So it gives you something to work towards. So I think that that's a positive side of the progression system. On the other side, there are some class builds that if you don't want to play that way, you're going to have a hell of a time going up against those classes head-to-head. A lot of the gameplay is situational. You know, if you find yourself in a sniping situation, then of course the sniper will outplay a heavy or a max unit. But when it comes to heavy and max units, if they're built and played properly, as an engineer, just with your gun, you have almost no chance against those classes. So that's just something to be conscious of. There are some OP builds in the game. Like I said, there's a good. To me, there's a good and a bad, because having a few OP builds does give you something to strive for, gives you a setup to look forward to gaining. But on the other hand, you're going to have to go against those OP builds sometimes as well, and it can be incredibly frustrating. One of perhaps the biggest pros of PlanetSide 2, if not the largest pro of PlanetSide 2, is the infinite number of battle scenarios that can come into play. So again, those of you who are familiar with Battlefield 4, you know, there are many different scenarios that you can get into at on the same level. You know, one time that you play the skyscraper level will be different than the next time you play the skyscraper level, because, you know, you'll have guys in tanks impacting the one match, and you'll have guys in helicopters impacting another match. Well, PlanetSide 2 is a lot like that. You know, one territory will turn into a snipe fest across two peaks. The next territory will be a very confined space where everyone's just running around as infantry. The next, you'll have tanks and airplanes involved. So there's almost an infinite amount of possible battle scenarios that really make the game interesting. Even when you go to attack or defend the same base that you've attacked or defended a bunch of times before, you're likely going to have it play out differently. So it keeps the game interesting. You don't feel like you're playing the exact same scenario on the exact same map over and over and over again. Couple more pros and cons before we finish up here. Just a quick pro from a working adult standpoint. You know, I don't think that working adults probably have as many friends in the gamer community as a lot of the younger players would. So it's nice that the game auto matches you into a squad. That way you can always have some people to run around with and have your back, rather than just being continuously put in a lone wolf scenario where you just get shit on by 8 players from the other team over and over again. So the auto squad matching feature is pretty nice. A couple quick points of contention with PlanetSide 2. The friendly fire being turned on causes some friendly fire griefing that really gets frustrating. It also interferes in large-scale battles. A lot of times you'll be battling for one territory in particular, and you'll have 40 of your teammates in a very small area, and you almost can't even shoot at the other team without drilling some of your teammates who are walking in front of your fire. And then on top of that, there's some griefing, which is compounded by the fact that the game allows you to create players from different factions and play them on the same server. So you can literally have someone log out of the team that you're playing against, then log in on your team and start killing people in your spawn. So, you know, it doesn't seem to be too big and widespread of a problem, but it's just something to be aware of if you haven't played the game and are thinking about checking it out. And the single biggest point of contention with PlanetSide 2, where you're going to run into some days where the game isn't as fun as others, is team imbalance. As far as I know, I don't think there is a lot built into the game, at least not the console version of the game, depending on the area that you're playing in. If you don't have a lot of people and there's only one server available in your area, which is the case for me, I don't think there's a lot of server balancing in terms of the number of players it allows to log on from each team. If there is, it's definitely not fine-tuned. So what will happen pretty frequently is you'll log in to a session where your team is just getting massacred, and just territory after territory, a wave of 100 players from another faction just rolls through and decimates your team, and you're constantly trying to fight with a squad of 12 or 24 players against 100 players on another team, and you really have no chance, and in that scenario you just start taking constant deaths. I will say that that doesn't happen too often. I usually am able to play, through an hour or two session without having to switch the area of the map that I'm playing too frequently. And you do always have that option. If one section of the map is just getting massacred, you can switch to another area, and it shows how many enemies are in that area, so you can always switch to a lower populated enemy area. But it does become frustrating at times. There have been definitely a few evenings where I have just gone from zone to zone to zone to try to find a matchup where my team was even able to hold their own for a minute, and that just wasn't the case. We just were getting dealt continual massacres, and that becomes no fun really fast, obviously. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up by just saying I think PlanetSide 2 is a pretty good game to hop into in 2018, even though the game's been out for a while. It's still fun to play. You can always just hop right in. You won't feel like you've been missing out on anything if you've been offline for a little while. Offers the same quick action as any of your Call of Duty or Battlefield type games. With a somewhat meaningful progression system, you got plenty of weapons, vehicles, and attachments to unlock, so you should be able to get 50 or 100 hours of gameplay in before you start to lose interest, and in my book, that's not half bad for a free-to-play game. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching the video and taking the time to listen to my commentary. If you're still around at this point, about 12 minutes in, that must mean you either found something interesting or you're just taking notes so you can shit all over me in the comments. Either way, I'm good with that. If you did like what we did here today, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. We're going to try to keep rolling out content at you as fast as we can. Until next time, nerds, Sarge out.